He's walked through war, but Xavier Bozeman never knew battle quite like the one he's been fighting since coming home.
Very scary. Very scary. I mean, more scary than combat.
The only thing scarier than combat for Bozeman, being homeless in his 30s after 3 combat deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan.
Just to know that after all these years I've provided, now I can't provide for no one, not even myself, that it brings you to a place you don't want to be.
After his last tour, Bozeman deciding to leave the Army, he began looking for a job, but he'd be shot down like never before.
Telemarketer, cook, I mean, shipyard work, anything that you can probably think of, I've applied for.
How many jobs you said you tried?
Over 500 in the last 2 years.
Low on leads and out of money, Bozeman and his wife moved in with her parents. Then, earlier this year, Bozeman's in-laws told him he had to go.
Basically just put me out the house. Told me I couldn't stay there no more unless I find a job. And I ended up sleeping in the truck.
Bozeman would sleep in a truck for the next 6 months. A soldier who just risked his life fighting for America, Bozeman was suddenly homeless in America.
My wife would sometimes slip meals out the door to me so I can eat. And that was hard for me to deal with, you know. A lot of angry nights at myself. I was blaming myself a lot and a lot of confusion. Just not knowing what my next step is going to be.
This is the main room of the Dom.
The domiciliary at the Hampton VA, home to a whole community of homeless veterans.
We have 169 beds. I think about 167 right now are full.
Increasingly, those filling these beds, a lot like the guy in room 100A, Iraq and Afghanistan war veterans with nowhere else to go.
It is really disturbing. It's disturbing because a year ago, we would see one every couple months. Now I get calls 3 or 4 a week.
In the past year alone, the Hampton VA's homeless program grew by 200 veterans. Of course, not all from Iraq or Afghanistan, but nationwide it's estimated at least 2,000 veterans from those wars are already homeless. Much faster than their predecessors, as one study points out. Vietnam veterans started experiencing homelessness roughly 9 to 12 years after they returned home.
The economy is very different than it was 30 years ago. It's that combined with the mismatch sometimes between the military job skills. It can be difficult when somebody's trained as a gunner on a ship, for instance, and then they come out and, okay, where's the gunner on the ship? Where are you going to do that in the community?
Sound familiar?
Oh, yeah.
Xavier Bozeman's struggle to find a job what left him sleeping in a truck in Newport News. Since walking the 7 miles to Hampton, Bozeman learning that to recover, he'll have to deal with what many believe is the root cause of unemployment and homelessness for returning veterans, post-traumatic stress disorder.
Coming back and not quite sure how to fit into society anymore because some of the realities of PTSD, some of this, what we call symptoms, are actually kind of protective in a battle zone where it's smart to be on guard and hyper alert and not to sleep much. Coming back to where things are relatively safe gets in your way.
How do you feel about going to PTSD next week?
I'm very excited.
Are
very
you?
excited. It's been a long time coming for me.
Treatment for PTSD forces veterans like Bozeman to relive the trauma of war in order to get past it.
A lot of the PTSD guys work out in here so that they can work out their anxiety and their anger and frustration.
Just a few years ago, the VA's PTSD program was largely filled with Vietnam veterans. Today, nearly 40% of patients are veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan.
It's going to be a challenge for me. It's going to be a challenge for me reliving those dark days and dark nights. But I walked 7 miles here to get admitted into the program here to help me to find employment and to deal with my medical issues and my mental issues. And I'll walk that walk again.
A veteran who never shied away from war, Bozeman now entrenched in his toughest battle yet. A battle more returning veterans just like him will likely be forced to continue fighting.